Is there like a spectrum of how on the take you can be? Are there ethical lines that you can cross? Some of it is money, and then is it possible to operate in a gray area that does not result in destructive ethical violations, deep ethical violations?
I have no idea. I don't think there is realistically. I mean, anything that kind of supports some of these groups, you're supporting things of a horrible nature. I just posted recently on my Instagram account of a lady that was in Guanajuato. She's one of 7 recently assassinated women that are looking for their kids, basically. There's a bunch of groups and organizations out there in Mexico, and some in Tijuana that I've actually walked with, who are taking control of trying to find the bodies of their kids. That's her up there.
Maria Carmela Vasquez, a mother who searched for her missing son, was shot to death outside her home on Sunday. Her son, Osmar Vasquez, disappeared on June 14th. The 46-year-old woman is the 5th mother to be killed this year while searching for their missing loved ones. She was a member of the Peñamo Missing Person Collective.
There's many groups out in Mexico who basically have given up on trusting the government to find their kids. The number of missing in Mexico is a debated topic because the government itself doesn't release those numbers, or at least hasn't done a good job about keeping them and or releasing them. Mexico is a country that has industrialized body disposal. In Tijuana, we had the stew maker, the legendary stew maker, which is a guy that basically used caustic acid to get rid of bodies at a massive level.
So there's a separate operation for getting rid of bodies and murdering the people.
At least in Tijuana, we saw that phenomenon, and it's obvious that it's going on all over Mexico.
Who's having those discussions about mass murder and getting rid of people? I've been reading a lot about World War II recently, and was aggressive innovation on the Nazi side of how to get rid of a large number of people. Because for the longest time, both the Soviets and the Soviets were more brutal with this. It's literally, it's a engineering problem of how you kill a large number of people and get rid of their bodies. So the Soviets were more into just laying people down into the grave, face down, and then shooting them in the back of the head. And then doing that on a mass scale. So you just pile people on. And then there was obviously innovation with the Holocaust in terms of gassing people and all that kind of stuff.
I'm not sure exactly where these tradecraft skills are coming from specifically. You hear discussions of Israelis training some of the cartel groups back in the late 90s, specifically the Ariano Fils cartel. There's a lot of stories about that. A security specialist coming down and showing them things like how to make caustic soda. How to put rocks inside of bodies and then chicken wire them around and to throw them into the ocean or river so that their bodies don't float. And when you kind of
put rocks inside of a body to make sure the body doesn't float.
So you open up the intestinal tract, put rocks inside. You cut where tattoos are, or you take off hands and faces and throw them somewhere else, and you wrap them in chicken wire.
So make it not identifiable.
Yeah, and throw them into a body of water. And this is a horrible thing, but it's actually
a craft. It's a trade craft.
It's trade craft, and there's a link to the U.S. as far as some of that trade craft. You have to remember that the United States had a thing called School of the Americas, and the CIA, and they showed things, and a lot of that stuff is out there in the hands of people that are of that generation.
So there's a manual.
There's a manual somewhere.
On, like with chapters, and it's like how to get rid of the body.
There's manuals out there.
Under time constraints, or how identifiable can the body be afterwards? What are geographical constraints? All that kind of stuff.
I think that was common back in the early 2000s and maybe the late 90s when some of these things were going on. But they've lost even that as far as respect for the government or bodies being found. Right now, what you usually see is just bodies being burnt to a crisp and buried in a field somewhere. That's usually what you'll see. Some of the groups like this this woman this woman belonged to, basically taking upon themselves to go out to find clandestine graves in the outskirts of the towns that they live in, probing the ground with these metal probes and seeing if the whatever they encounter in the bottom of these clandestine graves stinks or not. If they find IDs or clothing, they kind of gather that and they basically present it to the investigative authorities in the towns or the states they live in, which basically are doing their jobs. Over 90% of all murders in Mexico were never solved. I mean, it's so they've even stopped trying to get rid of bodies in that way.